Hi guys, some of you have made some excellent comments regarding the character and personality of Nadir Ahmed. There were a couple which made me think about what drives a person, and not only Nadir, to make statements and still feel right about them when these are so wrong. In a video I made a few months ago, I highlighted the intellectual failure of Hamzat's sources, and his inability to grasp concepts or abstract thinking and only see and analyze words or singular terms. I see the same pattern here again, the two-dimensional thinking. In addition, I find an extraordinary ability to blinker one's vision to only see what is valid for a single opinion, without the ability to look left or right or even play devil's advocate and try and falsify one's own premises and conclusions. I just hope these are not famous last words and somebody catches me doing exactly that. But then it would serve me right for not being thorough enough, and let's face it, nobody's perfect. Anyway, what I want to do here in this video is kill two birds with one stone. I realized that Nadir was unable to provide me with a definition for the terms in the sentence that he provided, which is in the Quran, in Surah Al-Rahman, which is chapter 55. Because in 19 and 20 it says, "He hath loosened the two seas, they meet, there is a barrier between them, they encroach not one upon the other." And this is just one of the translations. To make it shorter, Allah, the Arabic for God, Lord of the two sunrises and Lord of the two sunsets, has released or loosened two seas with a barrier between them, which neither can transgress or encroach or pass. Nadir compares this sentence to a scientific description of a picnic line and proudly presents as reference a book, The Barrier Zones in the Ocean, by Professor Emilian Emelianov. No, that will be Emelianov. Yeah, probably Emilian Emelianov from the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences in Kaliningrad. Now, this book from 1998, so it's not that old. In Nadir's simplistic and primitive line of reasoning, it means that the Quran mentions a barrier and the scientific textbook mentions the words, "it is a barrier." Ta-da! This means they are in total agreement with each other. Nadir then cites two other books which mention a boundary between layers of water of different densities, and picnic line forms an invisible boundary. So what exactly are we comparing? A sentence in a religious book and a description in a scientific textbook. When I asked Nadir for a definition of what the Quran says are seas and the barrier, he quickly changed the subject. When I insisted, he ignored it or accused me of interpretation, the very thing I was trying to avoid. But now I understand why, as on his own page he presents the reason himself in the only correct and viable sentence on his entire site. The truth is, we have no idea. So he himself says there is not enough information and it shouldn't be seen scientifically, but it should be understood morally. Okay, that is Nadir Ahmed's evaluation of the Quranic sentence. We have no idea and it's meant morally. So the water masses have a moral obligation not to cross over a boundary and then mingle with each other. Naughty, naughty. Or else what? Will they be flogged? Now hang on. Is the fact that since childhood I've had great pleasure in throwing stones into water merely a command from God to stone the naughty, immoral waters? Oh dear. Despite the Quran begging us to believe it is clear and explained and easy to understand and memorize, Nadir says this particular sentence delivers no meaningful information. Well, I'm not surprised, but stoning of the water still remains in my vivid imagination. The last time I had so much fun reading the Quran was when I came across the story of the snake. Since the entire Quran is in agreement with science, will Nadir present a video where a corpse is smacked with a piece of steak and is temporarily revived to point out the killer? Filmed on location in Transylvania. Now let's get serious again. We see that the language used in the Quran is We see that the language used in the Quran is vague and not precise at all. On the other hand, or the other side of the equation, we have science. Now, general science is a tool, not a worldview, which is used to describe the environment we live in. Science describes nature. Science describes reality. From the universe all the way to subatomic particles. What is the description or the task of science? Well, my personal definition is to accurately and precisely describe and document our real world, our natural surroundings, using systematic, accurate and precise experiments, measurements, observations, etc. to provide up-to-date data which can be falsified or confirmed, and by anyone, or applied as knowledge. And that's what it's ultimately about: knowledge, truth, verifiable, reproducible truth. This then leads to real-world applications or useful results. And because it is so vast, there is no universal science, but branches or fields, and all branches or fields of science describe the real world. Religion, on the other hand, describes a fantasy world, a world full of angels, demons, and other fantasy creatures. It is governed by the cerebral temporal lobe and cuddle hormones, such as oxytocin. In the real world, we have hydrodynamics, which explains how air and water layers retain their properties for some time before mixing with other air or water masses and changing consistency. Where they do this, we have a zone of transition, or the barrier, where the properties of one layer can still be distinguished from that of another mass. They are temporary and are geographically unstable barriers, which anyone who actually read the book would have known. An example would be where we see clouds forming in the sky. This is a barrier because we have an air mass with properties where density, temperature and humidity are not conducive to cloud formation. And suddenly, bam, due to meteorological changes and or topographic changes, this condition changes due to air movement, and we see the sudden formation of clouds. This brings back memories. I mean, I did this for 2 years. What we have is that the consequences of a word, such as theory or barrier, vary between a scientifically educated person and a religious zealot who is not allowed to believe in natural phenomena or that evolution is a fact. If we have a Nadir or Hamza or anybody who sees a word such as barrier in a religious book where it is not understood, and he then finds the word barrier in a science book where it is also not understood, it suddenly makes perfect sense that he thinks they must be talking about the same thing. But as soon as the trained eye looks at this, the differences quickly become apparent. And why choose the picnic line and not one of the other 40 geochemical boundaries, transition zones, barriers, or barrier zones in the oceans? We will never know. We see that science is precise, accurate, and exact. Science defines everything, so no misunderstandings occur. The time goes, yeah, okay. The Quran, however, is vague, ambiguous, and not even Quran scholars have explanations for the meaning of all sentences. There are no definitions. So how can anyone even dream of comparing these two diametrically opposed texts? Why drag a religious book into the highly detailed arena of science? Or, well, as I've postulated before, why drag a bobby car to a Formula 1 race? So in spite of Nadir's woefully inner pleas for recognition, we conclude that the Quran, or any religious book for that matter, does not contain any scientifically useful information for us. There are no useful applications for the development of mankind that can be derived from religious texts. And as people have pointed out to me, if the authors of the Quran knew about the bubonic plague, why not include step-by-step instructions for the production of antibiotics into the Quran? Now, that would have been useful, beneficial, sensational even, humanitarian, and would have saved a lot of lives, that of humans and of rats. Now, I think this whole thing with Nadir, really, what irritates me most still is this attitude that if confronted with a straight question, he goes off on a tangent and then he throws out ad hominems and strawmen. This is just sheer polemics and stupidity. So what I've tried to do is show how somebody like Nadir is unable to comprehend in any way what science actually means. What I've also tried to show is that the Quran is not accurate, is not precise, and science is not vague or ambiguous. So there is no way that you can compare these two texts and find any kind of similarity between them. It is a futile operation. I wish people would stop it. Thank you for your time.